When you're living and working in Canada, you may accrue a lot of different Canadian accounts. Your registered retirement savings plan, you might have a LIRA, you might have non-registered accounts, RESPs, TFSAs, all of these accounts that may be fine up in Canada, but may not be so good here down in the States. We're going to talk about which accounts are okay and which accounts you may have a problem, which Canadian accounts you may have a problem if you move down to the US. My name is Brian Haggard. I'm a certified financial planner, chartered financial analyst, and I'm the founder of Retirement and Financial. We help simplify your cross-border retirement plan. One of the hardest things about cross-border planning is just all of the different accounts that you may have. You have your accounts up in Canada, like your RSPs, your LIRAs, your TFSAs, right? You have your accounts here in the States. You'd have your 401ks, your IRAs, your Roth IRAs, your brokerage accounts, right? And putting it all together can be pretty complex. But one of the things that we're going to talk about today is, really out of those Canadian accounts, which may be a problem if you're now a US resident. So let's start off by talking about some accounts that are fine to have here in the States, right? That we see every single day, and it's okay to have these accounts in the States. And those are mainly your RRSPs and LIRAs. RRSPs are your registered retirement savings plans. Your LIRAs are your locked-in retirement accounts. You may have other registered retirement accounts as well, depending on which province you worked at. But typically, these registered retirement accounts are going to be just fine here in the States. And you can, we talk about that a lot with our clients, and you probably will see it in some of our other videos, different withdrawal strategies that you may want to consider when you're taking out those accounts as a state. Now, those accounts are perfectly fine to have here up in the States. But one of the things that you do have to remember is if you have those accounts, or really any accounts up in Canada, you have to make sure that you are reporting those correctly on your taxes. So there's typically two different tax forms that people have to be mindful of if you have Canadian accounts. Those are an FBAR, which is the foreign bank account reporting, and then there's the form 8938. Now the FBAR is probably the most popular type of reporting that you need to do. You don't do your FBAR on your taxes. You can do it electronically outside of your taxes, but you have to file an FBAR anytime your total Canadian accounts exceed $10,000. The other form that you might have to fill out, a lot of our clients have to fill out, is called a Form 8938. That is actually filed with your US taxes. And that is what you have to file that if your total Canadian accounts exceed $50,000 if you're single, or $100,000 if you're married. A lot of people that we speak with when they first come to us, they don't believe they need to file FBARs on just simply on registered retirement accounts, but that is not the case. We have a lot of people that unfortunately face penalties and fines and things like that, but that do not by not reporting these correctly. So you want to make sure that you are filing these on a year-by-year basis. If you're not, there can be some issues in the past. But RSPs and LIRAs here in the States are completely fine to hold on to. So now let's talk about some accounts that may be a little bit more problematic up here or down here in the States. The first one I want to talk about are non-registered investment accounts. These are kind of your normal, after-tax brokerage accounts that you would have up in Canada. You may have those invested in stocks or bonds or GICs or mutual funds or ETFs, right? Whatever those may be. Those can be problematic, but not always. One of the things about non-registered investment accounts is if they are invested in mutual funds or ETFs, those mutual funds and ETFs here as a US resident, if they're denominated in Canadian dollars, the US consider those to be a passive foreign investment corporation. And unfortunately, because they consider those to be a passive foreign investment corporation, or a PFIC for short, you need to file annual PFIC statements on these. And that can be pretty problematic to begin with. Every single investment that you have up in Canada that would be a mutual fund or a ETF, you would need to file this report on. And any income that you earn from these mutual funds or ETFs, even if you don't, even if there's no capital gains on the account, has to be reported as income every single year via these PFIC statements. So you can see how it becomes pretty problematic to have these non-registered investment accounts. Now, we have clients that have non-registered investment accounts up in Canada that are invested in individual stocks. That will be fine. They may have GICs up in Canada, or just checking and savings accounts in Canada. That is fine. Where the problem tends to arise is if you have Canadian-based ETFs or mutual funds up in Canada. If that is the case, you want to probably start to consider, quite honestly, getting rid of those accounts so that you don't have to file these PFIC statements each year. Even consider moving those down to the States. I know a lot of people don't like the exchange rate of moving the funds down, which is the reason that they don't do it. But a lot of times you're going to find that down here in the States, especially if you're going to stay here for a long time, you have more investment options. And a lot of times you have lower cost investment options as well. So yes, non-registered investment accounts in Canada can be okay. You just have to be mindful of the investments that you have up there. The next account that we want to talk of that could be a problem down here in the States are called tax-free savings accounts, or a TFSA in Canada. And the reason that those are an issue is the IRS has never really made a declaration of what a TFSA or how it should be reported here. And as a result, a lot of people will kind of use, it's a little bit of a gray area, but they will, a lot of times, a lot of tax planners will consider a TFSA to be a foreign trust on your US tax returns. And that causes two major issues. The first is, because these are considered a foreign trust, there's a long foreign trust tax reporting that you have to do every single year. The tax reporting is actually 6 pages long. So already, either you're going to be doing this or a tax preparer is going to be doing this. It's going to be pretty expensive to hold on to these TFSAs each year. The other issue is every time you have gains on these TFSAs, TFSAs are tax-free up in Canada. All of the growth is tax-free up in Canada. But here in the States, they will consider the income on these TFSAs to be taxable ordinary income on a year-to-year basis. And so a lot of times our recommendation is, if you're going to stay in the States for a long time, 5-10 years, you're going to be filing US tax returns for 5-10 years, a lot of times you may want to consider, you may want to consider getting rid of those TFSAs, moving them down here to the States, moving them into a, here in the US, either a brokerage account. You may be able to make Roth IRA contributions, which are equivalent to a TFSA down here in the States. If you're going to stay here long term, that's almost always our recommendation. Now, if you're only going to be here in the States for a short term, couple of years, you may decide it's worth it to just keep these TFSAs, pay the taxes, do the annual filing on them, and then that way when you move back to Canada, you now have tax-free growth in Canada. But those TFSAs as a US resident can become problematic. The other account that we have clients kind of run into trouble with are RESPs, not to be confused with RRSPs. RRSPs are registered retirement savings plans. Those are perfectly fine here in the States, but the RESP is a registered education savings plan. And unfortunately, we have a lot of younger families that move down here to the States. They have these RESPs, and all of a sudden, the tax preparer looks at it and they find that this is an issue. RESPs, like TFSA, a little bit of a gray area, and so they're reported the same. A lot of times we'll find that the RESP is also considered a foreign trust here in the States, which makes, again, same thing as the TFSAs, it typically will require a 6-page reporting requirement, and you'll have to pay ordinary income taxes on the gains. Now, there's a couple of different options with the RESP, but one of the options that we see a lot of a lot of our clients take is gifting their RESP to a family member. That way, that family member can actually manage it and use those funds for a child's education, for your own child's education, without you having to report those on your taxes every single year. So that is something that we have seen other clients do in the past. So a couple of thoughts. So again, RRSP, LIRAs, those should be completely fine here in the States. You just need to make sure that you are reporting those on a year-to-year basis to the states, either with the FBAR, that Form 8938. The non-registered investment accounts are, again, those are okay here in the States unless you have Canadian-based mutual funds or ETFs. If that's the case, you probably want to get rid of those and just either invest in individual stocks up in Canada or move that money down to the States to invest in. The RESP and a TFSA, those are problematic. Right now, most people will consider those to be a foreign trust here in the States, which results in pretty hefty preparations, filing that you have to do on a year-by-year basis, as well as potentially having to declare any income on that each year as well. Now, the timeline is important. If you're planning on moving back to Canada, again, you may say, you know what, I'm okay, especially if you're working with a corporation that does your taxes anyway for you. You may say, you know what, I'm okay holding on to these for a couple of years. I don't have to worry about the tax filing fees that all of these are actually doing that I have to do on all of these accounts. And I would rather just wait and then keep them up in Canada and let them go as is when you return to Canada. If you're thinking you want to be down here for a long time, though, it really makes sense to start to kind of get rid of some of these accounts. You might want to consider gifting your RESP, liquidating your TFSAs, and starting to move out of those Canadian-based mutual funds and ETFs that you may have up in Canada as well. Again, my name is Brian Haggard. I'm a certified financial planner, chartered financial analyst, founder of Retirement and Financial. If you're looking to work with a fee-only financial planner to help with your cross-border financial planning, please consider going to our website, retiremitten.com, and scheduling a meeting, a complimentary consultation to talk about your situation and our services with one of our financial advisors. Thanks again.